Alrighty, let's bring service into order. Come. I was in the middle of a teaching series on Colossians, and we will return to it. But I felt inspiration from God, and I follow the Lord in His leading. So we're going to take some time to go down this rabbit trail that I believe God has for us. And it might turn out to be a little bit bigger than a rabbit trail, but we shall see. I'm going to give you a little bit of a roadmap of what I'm going to do tonight. I'm going to spend the first half of tonight walking through a Bible story. We're just brass tacks. We're just talking about the story. I'm not going to give any exposition. I'm not going to explain how we apply it, because the second half is going to be all application. But we have to know the story. And so for some, this is going to be review, and for some, this might be your first time. But for all of us, this is going to give us enough information. Have you ever been in a situation where the preacher is making reference to a story, and you're vaguely familiar? And so you can mostly follow, but they're making a point, and you feel like, I'm not exactly sure what that point has to do with the story. It could be that there is a certain detail or a nuance from the story that they're drawing upon that maybe you aren't aware of. So I don't want that to happen tonight. I want us to be all on the same page. Before I hop into that, I want to just do some quick announcements. This, once again, my hat goes off to this church because this past weekend was exceptional. We had a wonderful turnout for our outreach on Saturday. We had that day one baptized, one filled with the Holy Ghost, and then Sunday we had 3 baptized in the only saving name of Jesus. The report was there was over 200 that stopped by that day, or that's one way they counted it, or maybe including our people. I don't know. 200 people were under that pavilion at some point. And so we'll leave that to your judgment. We had 16 people say that they're interested in both small group and a one-on-one Bible study, and 10 that said they're interested in small group. And I thank everybody who was helping with following up with that, because we can do all that work, but unless there is follow-up, we're not going to see the fruit of what God is bringing to this local assembly. So please, if you've volunteered or been assigned somebody, please make sure you reach out to this person. Even if the person is not interested, you can always have a warm interaction. Just a warm interaction goes a long way. And if you intermittently, a couple of months spread out, if they've shut down the conversation, just drop them invites to certain events. You can do that infrequently. It's not blow up their phone. And when they do decide to walk with God, you're going to be the person that comes to mind. Coming up this Friday is the Hartman wedding. We're really excited for them. We're going to celebrate with them. They're going to get married in a holy matrimony, the 2 becoming one. So I'm super thrilled for them, and we will celebrate with them. The 20th, our ladies are having a movie night discussion. I believe that's at 6 p.m. It could be 7, but my calendar says 7. So that is at 7. So if you want details, please connect with Crystal, and she can give you some more information. And then the final thing for the month is we're having Pastor Suarez from Villa Park, Illinois. He's going to come with us, and he's going to do some training for us. Friday night, that's going to be June 27th, Friday night, he's going to be at NAG. And so all of us are welcome to be a part of that. Really is geared toward leadership, so like it's kind of the thing, so you should probably be in leadership, but it's a lot more broad, more general. But then Saturday night, we're having 3 meetings. The first meeting is, if you're involved in ministry here, come to the first meeting. If you're involved in small groups, come to the second meeting. And then the final meeting, if you feel a call to pulpit ministry, that final meeting is going to be for us. And we're going to take some time to learn some things about what it is that God is doing for him and the many. He is not just himself planted many churches, but leading the Spanish district in Illinois. I forgot what the number was. 16 churches they started under his direction, and he goes around, he helps churches plant more churches. And so he is revival-minded, and he has a wonderful apostolic legacy. Just fun fact, the gospel in Colombia, the Pentecostal message in Colombia, In fact, if you didn't know, if you did anything of studies of Pentecostalism, you'll realize that I think it was the 90s or the 80s, there's this massive wave of Pentecostalism that happened in Colombia. And it happened so quickly that people were doing studies like, how is this religion spreading so fast? His father was a key figure to that. So that's the legacy that he's comes from. Of course, not just him, there's others there as well. His father is a part of that legacy that caused the boom of Pentecostalism and the apostolic faith there in Colombia. So he comes from a great line, and I believe there's a lot that's going to bless us. So that's going to be with us. And of course, that Sunday, he's going to preach for us Sunday morning. Traditionally, the final Sunday is our evangelism service, but we've been so busy, I'm going to give y'all a break. So we'll just enjoy service, and then we're not going to do outreach after the service. We'll pick that up in the following month. With that, announcements. We had our first small group meeting yesterday. It was wonderful, wonderful for the semester. We had a wonderful time. I read through the ladies' report. They had 11 there, believe 11. So that's wonderful. That's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. You know, the men's group was intimate. We'll say that. It was an intimate setting, and there was brothers and camaraderie, and it was a wonderful time. We had a lot of discussion, but it was definitely needed. And we just had some of our men were just entangled in other things, but that's all right. They do intend to show up in the future. But even with the group that we had a powerful prayer meeting with just 3 people. There was a powerful prayer meeting that happened there. We could certainly feel the Holy Ghost, and the guest that we had with us was praying fervently. So God is moving. It's not about numbers, it's about quality. And we had a quality time there. I'm looking forward to what God's going to do with the rest of the semester. Okay, with that, let's get started. We're going to be camping out in 1 Samuel chapter 4. And I'm going to do a mixture of storytelling and reading Bible, but we're going to tell a story. So there's a war that's going on. Our first verse is going to be 1 Samuel 4, verse 10. But I'm going to fill in the details leading up to that. So there's a war that's going on between the Philistines and the Israelites. This particular battle is being fought between 2 camps, Aphek and Ebenezer. And right between there, the armies are going to war. This is like the middle of Israel, roundabouts the middle. It's north of Jerusalem. West, it's northwest of Jerusalem. And in this first engagement, so wars are a series of battles, and this particular battle that we're opening up to in 1 Samuel chapter 4, the Israelites, they don't do so well. It actually doesn't go very well at all. They go into battle and they find themselves defeated. And so they go back licking their wounds trying to figure out, okay, so what do we do? And they get this flash of inspiration. They think that if we could just bring the Ark of the Covenant to the battlefield, surely the victory will be ours. My next statement is merely conjecture, but it seems that they may have thought that God delivered us from Egypt, and he delivered us all through the time of our wilderness. Surely if we could just get God in the midst of what we're doing, we'll have victory. And so they brought the Ark of the Covenant, which symbolized the presence of God, into the camp. And so as the Ark entered the camp, the Israelites began to rejoice and to clamor and to make a lot of noise. There was shouting, and they were causing quite a stir. In fact, it was so much of a sound in the camp that the Philistines, when they heard it, they began to fear. They were met by dread. They were overcome because they could hear them rejoicing, and they assumed it must be their God of theirs. And they started telling stories among themselves that, you remember how Yahweh delivered them out of Egypt and then brought plagues and all those different things. That is going to happen to us again. But in spite of their fear, they steeled themselves for the battle. And 1 Samuel 4 says this, verse 10. So the Philistines fought, and Israel was defeated. And every man fled to his tent, and the slaughter was very great. For there fell 30,000 foot soldiers. And the ark of God was taken, and the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, they died. Eli is the priest at this time. He's the priest for the tabernacle of God. And the fallout of this defeat reverberated throughout all of Israel. The news came back to Eli the priest, and he was so stunned by this news that he fell off of his stoop and landed on his neck and died. The wife of Phinehas had heard the news of this defeat, and it brought upon so much stress that it induced labor. Evidently, because of the speed of the labor, it was a precipitous labor. And they were trying to talk to her, and she could barely hear them because of how great the pangs there were. And when the child was born, she named the child Ichabod, because the glory of the Lord was gone. It was a terrible time in Israel. Things could not have been worse. The Philistines took the Ark of the Covenant from Ebenezer to Ashdod, which was a major city in the country of Philistia. Philistia occupied the southwestern part of Israel at that time. I think Gaza, modern-day Gaza, was there. A lot of the Palestinians would be in a similar region. And there were 5 major cities, so Ashkelon, Gath, et cetera, et cetera. There was about 5 of them. And they brought the temple to the ark to the temple of Dagon. And they put the temple there, and because, if we could take their God, now we have their power. We have their victory. Everything is going to be okay. And we're going to turn the tides of the battle, and now we're going to win the war. But the thing that they had feared, the thing that they were worried about that was going to happen, proceeded to happen in full force. Remember this, if you go to verse 7 of 1 Samuel 4, they said this when they heard them cheering in the camp. It said, the Philistines were afraid, for they said, God has come into the camp. And they said, woe to us, for nothing like this has happened before. Woe to us. Who shall deliver us from the hand of these mighty gods? These are the gods who smote the Egyptians and all the kinds of plagues in the wilderness, with all the plagues. They presumed, because Israel was weak, that their God was weak. That was mistake number 1. God did not need Israel to show up and to show out. And so in Yahweh fashion, not only does he, by the sheer magnitude of his own power, desecrate the idol of Dagon, he began to loose plagues upon the people of Philistia. Boils and mice and things were going awful. It was a terrible time for them as well. Everybody is having a bad time. This went on for about 7 months, and they decided that they couldn't bear it any longer. They decided that we cannot contain the power of Yahweh as we initially thought. He is not merely a regional deity of Israel, but he is a God that has power in all places. So, 1 Samuel 6, they took 2 milch cows and hitched them to the cart and shut up their calves at home. They put the ark of the Lord on the cart, and the box was with the golden mice and the likeness of their tumors, and the cows took the straight way in the direction of Beth Shemesh. And they went along the highway, lowing as they went, and did not turn aside to the right or to the left. And the lords of the Philistines followed them to the border of Beth Shemesh. Beth Shemesh, nothing to do with the lesson, but it's the temple of the sun. That's what that name means. They couldn't, when they got into the land, they couldn't drive out all the Canaanites of the land. And so there were some sun worshipers still in the city. And then the Israelites too. Okay, And so the people of Beth Shemesh, they were working in their fields, right? So it's like the camera changes lens. The camera was following the Philistine people as they were getting rid of the Ark of the Covenant. And then it's like there's a transition of scene. And so now it's from the perspective of the workers in the field. They're tilling to the field, tending to it. And all of a sudden, they hear this rattling of a cart, and they look up, and they see the Ark of the Covenant. As you can imagine, they were very surprised. Because when it left, it caused all these ripples throughout Israel. And so for them to see this, you can imagine the elation that they were experiencing at the time. They were excited. Everyone rejoiced. The Levites, they set down the ark, they put it on a high place, and they began to give offerings to God. The people rejoiced because finally the presence of God had returned. And then curiosity kicked in. And you know the phrase, curiosity killed the cat. And in this case, curiosity killed 50,070 men. You know the saying, curiosity killed 50,000 people. Well, that curiosity got the best of them, and there was a vicious reaction from God. And for days following, you can imagine the suffocating feeling of mourning and fear and anger that loomed over the city. Fear because of how great God is. Mourning because there are orphans and widows that are now proliferated through the city. And anger because how could the God that we have given our lives to do such a thing as this? The officials of the city, they were irate. And they said, hey, this can't be happening. This thing can't stay here. All right, 50,000 people, our labor force is low, our taxes, what's going to happen? How are we going to function as a city? We can't lose any more people. God, we love you, but you got to get up out of here. And so they called Kecoughtan Rd, and they say, hey, you take the Ark of the Covenant. I doubt that they told them that 50,000 people died. I bet they just said, hey, the presence of God. I bet you want the presence of God. And so, they had to get out of Dodge because I don't think they could afford another 50,000. That would absolutely destroy not just their economy, but everything about their way of life. And so, 1 Samuel 7. The men of Kecoughtan Rd, they came and they took the ark and they brought it into the house of Abinadab. And they put it on a hill, and they consecrated Eleazar, his son, to keep the ark of the Lord. And from that day, the ark remained in Kecoughtan Rd. The time was long. It was 20 years. And all of the house of Israel lamented after the Lord. In the interim time of that 20 years, many things transpired. Israel gets its first king, and this rising star disobeys, quickly crashes out, and burns. A new king is anointed in secret, and there is this legendary standoff between the champion of Israel and the champion of the Philistines. David spends many of his years on the run from Saul, after working up the ranks and becoming a high official in that same army. Eventually, David becomes king, and all of the tribes of Israel are united together, and he leads the first time. He's the first king to lead a united Israel. All 12 tribes led by one king. Short-lived, him and his son, and that's it. So it didn't last very long. Well, and I guess Rehoboam for about a month or two, or however long he lasted. After pushing back the Philistines in a series of miraculous victories that are very reminiscent of Joshua, at that moment, David has become a one like Joshua. He's inquiring of God and going from battle to battle, getting victory after victory. Eventually, David decides it's time to move the Ark of the Covenant to its proper place. He had conquered the city of the Jebusites, and he said, this is a fitting place for the presence of God to dwell. You turn over to 1 Samuel 2 Samuel chapter 6. We're jumping way into the future. And I'm going to read this entire chapter. I wanted to summarize it, but it was just so well written as is. I couldn't do better. I'm not suggesting that my summary was better than the Bible, but this is just so engaging. I don't know if I could make it any more engaging than what it is. So I'm going to be reading from the NLT because it's really easy to follow. And I want us to understand what's happening. This is going to be a long reading. And once we get through here, then I'm going to start teaching. This will give us all the details that we need for the lesson. So 2 Samuel 6, reading from the NLT, it says this. Then David gathered all the elite troops in Israel, 30,000 in all. Remember that number, right? How many died in that first battle? 30,000. That's a literary link. Okay. And he led them to Bala of Judah to bring back the ark of God, which bears the name of the Lord of heaven's armies, right? Yahweh Sabaoth, who is enthroned between the cherubim. They placed the ark of God on a new cart and brought it from Abinadab's house, which was on a hill. Uzzah and Ahio, Abinadab's sons, were guiding the cart, and that carried the ark of God. And Ahio walked in front of the ark. And so David and all the people of Israel were celebrating before the Lord, singing songs and playing all kinds of musical instruments, lyres, harps, tambourines, castanets, and cymbals. But when they arrived at the threshing floor of Kecoughtan, the ox stumbled. You know, the threshing floor is a lot going on. It's uneven land. And Uzzah reached out his hand and he went to steady the ark. And it said the Lord's anger was aroused against Uzzah, and God struck him dead because of this. So Uzzah died right there beside the ark of God. Now, David was angry because of the Lord's anger had burst out against Uzzah. And he named the place Perez Uzzah, which means to burst out against Uzzah, as it is still called to this day. David was now afraid of the Lord, and he said, how can I ever bring the ark of the Lord back into my care? So he decided not to move the ark of the Lord into the city of David. Instead, he took it to the house of Obed-Edom of Gath. This is the second time, like, people just be killing this ark just be killing people. People get murked, gone, unalive, done for. And so every time that happens, they say, oh, we're just going to leave this thing alone, right? And the ark of the Lord remained there in Obed-Edom's house for 3 months. And the Lord blessed Obed-Edom and his entire household. Then King David was told, the Lord has blessed Obed-Edom's house and everything that he has because of the ark of God. So David, he went there and brought the ark of God from the house of Obed-Edom to the city of David with great celebration. After the men who were carrying the ark of the Lord, notice that it was on a cart before, now it's being carried. That's an important detail. Okay. So the men who were carrying the ark had gone 6 steps. Then they would stop, and then David sacrificed a bull and a fattened calf. They did that for every 6 steps. And David danced before the Lord with all of his might, wearing a priestly garment. So David and all the people of Israel brought up the ark of the Lord with shouts of joy and blowing of ram's horns. But as the ark of the Lord entered the city of David, Michal, the daughter of Saul, looked down from her window, and when she saw King David leaping and dancing before the Lord, she was filled with contempt. They brought the ark of the Lord and set it in its place inside the special tent that David had prepared for him. And David sacrificed burnt offerings and peace offerings to the Lord. And when he had finished his sacrifices, David blessed the people in the name of the Lord of heaven's armies. And then he gave every Israelite man and woman in the crowd a loaf of bread, a cake of dates, and a cake of raisins. And then all the people returned to their homes. Almost done. Bear with me. Almost done. And when David returned home to bless his own family, Michal, the daughter of Saul, came out to meet him. And she said in disgust, you could just imagine the most naggy wife, woman voice. Oh, you were so distinguished. Dancing. Shameless. Look at you. Looking nasty. Exposing yourself. And she had a lot of sass and attitude, right? She's sassy because she rebelled against her dad, who was the king and was killing people, and helped David escape. So she got some chutzpah, all right? And so she was sassy, letting him know the business. And David said, if you think you're sassy, two can play that game. It said, David retorted, I was dancing before the Lord, who, this is such a crazy thing to say, who chose me above your father and all of his family. He died in battle, and her brother, by the way. So he's making, I don't want to say mocking, but like low-key kind of mocking her dead family. So she came at him. He said, well, your dad's dead. So that was his response. And he appointed me the leader of Israel, the people of the Lord. So I celebrate the Lord. And yes, I'm willing to look even more foolish than this, even to be humiliated in my own eyes. But those servant girls you mentioned will indeed think I am distinguished. And so Michal, the daughter of Saul, remained childless throughout her entire life. So now we have the story. You have all the details. You have all the pieces. We're all together. I like to show my hand a little bit to understand. I was in a conversation with Bishop Blankenship, and he was telling me about this sermon that he preached on Sunday morning. I listened to it, and I heard that, and I was inspired. I'm going in a little bit different direction. Some similarities, but I'm going in a little bit different direction. I was inspired by the message. I was inspired by our conversation. And I said, there's so much to this story, and I think it would be a blessing to this people. And so that's kind of a little bit of it. So if you listen to the sermon from this past Sunday, you're going to hear similarities. And so, of course, there's going to be lots of differences. Just me and Bishop have very different ways of expressing things. But I want to just hit a couple of points, show a couple of observations, and then figure out, okay, what can we take from this? First thing I want to draw our attention to, that very first battle, when they brought the Ark of the Covenant, why did they lose that battle? We're Wednesday night. We're casual enough, all right? Anybody want to take a stab at it? If you know the story and you know the verses, it kind of tells you why. You would have to have read a couple of chapters after and gives the answer, right? It's okay. I didn't know either. That's why I had to read it. I had to refresh myself. So we read 1 Samuel chapter 4. If you go over to chapter 7 of 1 Samuel, it actually gives us a little bit of insight to why I believe they did lose that first battle. 1 Samuel chapter 7, verse 3. Then Samuel spoke to all the house of Israel, saying, if you return to the Lord with all your heart, and remove the foreign gods and the Ashtoreth, that's the Asherah poles, from among you. There's some scholars that say that the way Israel worshipped, they did worship Yahweh, but they believed that Yahweh had a wife, and her name was Asherah. So when you see Asherah, she's perceived as the consort of the Lord. And so they had this weird, syncretistic, polygamist, like polytheistic version of ancient Israel religion. And so there's a lot of Israelites who thought, yeah, God has a wife, obviously, and it was Asherah. That's a theory. So I happen to agree that that's what they did. So they worship her as such. That's why you always see Baal and Asherah together. Baal and Asherah, those go together. Because Yahweh was a storm god, and Baal is a storm god. And so the Israelites, ignorant, they're like, Baal, Yahweh, yeah, probably the same thing. And so that's why you see that pairing often. Okay. So tear down those Asherah poles and direct your hearts to the Lord and serve him alone, and he will deliver you from the hand of the Philistines. So the sons of Israel removed the Baals and the Asherah poles, and they served the Lord alone. You see, the reason why they lost that battle is because they had a split allegiance. You see, we cannot serve two masters. If we want to see the power of God in our lives, then we must be devoted to God in every area of our life. Careless and sloppy Christianity gives you a form of godliness without the power. You see, they thought because they had the Ark of the Covenant, they had a form of religiosity that if I could just do these rituals and do these things, the power will follow. That wasn't the case. See, their devotion had slipped and stumbled, and their hearts went a-whoring after other gods, and it made their walk with God sloppy. You see, the idols that we serve are not the ones built by hands, but the ones in our hearts. Calvin is quoted of saying that our hearts are factories for idols. Ezekiel 14 says this, then some of the elders of Israel came to me, the me being Ezekiel, and sat down before me. And the word of the Lord came to me saying, Son of man, these men have set up their idols in their hearts and they have put them right before their faces, the stumbling block of their iniquity. Should I be consulted by them at all? Therefore, speak to them and tell them, thus says the Lord God, any man of the house of Israel who sets up his idols in his heart, put right before his face the stumbling block of his iniquity, and then comes to the prophet, I, the Lord, will be brought to give him an answer in matter in view of the multitude of his idols, in order to lay hold of the hearts of the house of Israel who are estranged from me through all their idols. You see, God dealt with the people of Israel in that battle in light of their idols. If you want to put your faith in Baal, this powerful warrior, if you want to put your confidence in Asherah, okay, let them fight your battle. And when they thought that, well, God, we're bringing you into this too. We're bringing you into the midst. God will not share his glory with another. And so they sought to have this battle with their idols still held on to them. If I could make an application for us here today, I think we have just gotten a little too comfortable with some of the idols in our hearts. I feel that we're just a little too comfortable. We've dusted off a shelf where the Holy Ghost is supposed to be, and we said, I know I have the Holy Ghost, but let's, you know what, out of my belly. We'll put the Holy Ghost in my belly, but in my heart, I have some idols. Borrowing from Timothy Keller, maybe the idol you have in your heart is an idol of power, a desire for influence, a desire for success, a desire to win, your obsession with achievement. And now that drives you to be so fearful of humiliation and significance and weakness. And if I could just, I know I'm valuable if I can be in control, if I can be in charge, if I can be the head honcho, if I can call the shots, then I'll matter. When you go to that power for your sense of self-worth, instead of going to God, you have an idol of power. Or maybe it's approval. You desire to be accepted. You desire to be loved. You desire to be admired. And you can't bear the thought of being rejected. You can't stand being criticized even just a little bit. And God forbid that people don't like me if I can just be loved. If I can be well-liked, if I can get validation, if people can just show me the love that I want, then I know that I'll matter. Instead of finding that love in God, that approval is an idol. Or it could be comfort. Oh, God, I want it to be easy. pleasure. I need pleasure or anything that looks like stress or sacrifice. I don't want anything to do with it. I'm not going to get involved in the church because I'm not going to let them take my time. No demands from me, or you know what, if I get involved with soul work, I might have to suffer. If I get involved in the church, I got to deal with people. And I don't want to suffer anymore because people suck. And they cause problems, and they hurt my feelings. And you know what? I don't want to deal with this anymore, and I don't want to deal with difficulty. I'm done. We've allowed comfort to take control. I want pleasure. I want the easy way. We have these idols in our heart, and the final one is control. I need certainty. I need stability. I need to be perfectly disciplined in everything that I do all the time. And if in my life there must be order. If it don't make sense, it's not for me. If it doesn't make sense, if it doesn't make perfect sense and totally ordered together, it's not for me. I can't stand uncertainty. I can't stand the feeling of chaos or feeling out of control. You know what? You know when I'm valuable? When I can keep everything in my power. So I'd rather be to myself or doing something small or disengage from a greater mission, because if I'm governing one life, I know I can't take care of everybody around me, but I can keep me in order. I can take care of my house. We allowed our desire for control to take that front seat, and we had these different idols working in our heart, leading us. Instead of being led by the Spirit, we want to be affirmed, we want to be validated, we want comfort, we want it easy, we want to be in control, we want power. We must. It is of the utmost importance that we surrender these idols to God. We cannot live the way God has designed for us to live if we have these idols working in our hearts. You know, another question that I had reading this, I have some questions. I'm reading these stories, and I have some questions. There's some things that stand out to me. Why did 50,000 people die? Seemed like a little bit of an overreaction to me. Why did Uzzah, or Uzzah, however you want to pronounce it, why did Uzzah die? If that's not making a mountain out of a molehill, I don't know what is. It's like, you know, I told my daughter no snacks, and she asked me for a snack, and so I backhand her, so don't you ever ask me for snacks again. That is an overreaction. That's a whole lot. Probably shouldn't act that way. 50,000 people? Bro, that's wild. Like, I want you to think about that. Like, it's okay to say, it's a safe space. Like, we love God, okay? I'm not an atheist. I'm not trying to gotcha. I'm not tricking you out of loving Yahweh, okay? We're good, all right? We know he's love and all that stuff. But, like, 50,000 people, though, that's kind of, like, just be honest. There's a lot of people. And what do? They peek inside of a little box. Like, they looked at the box, and then bam, gone. You know, there's times in the Bible that God acts in ways that we don't always understand. Or maybe we feel like his responses are extreme. What I'm not going to do today is alleviate that tension. I'm going to leave that there. It's okay. Rock with the tension. It'll be good for you. But what I want to do is remind us that these texts are meditation literature. What I mean by that is that the Bible is ancient Jewish literature that is artistically designed to interpret self and encourage a lifetime of rereading and reflection. It was written in such a way to make you think. And if 50,000 people dropping dead don't make you wonder, you have nerves of steel. Like, some things happen in the Bible, and you're supposed to just be like, what is going on? What do you mean a talking snake in the garden? What? How was Cain supposed to know what sacrifice to give. What do you mean by the sons of God? They looked at the daughters of, what is that? What do you mean by that? How are they going to build a tower to get into heaven? I don't understand. They all spoke one language? God divided you're supposed to think. You're supposed to think, Abraham had a kid at 99 or it was 100 or whatever it was. I don't know. There's some strange stuff happening in the Bible. Bro, did Joseph's dad really believe his brothers? Like goat blood and human, like come on, man. Brother weren't born yesterday. Like, you knew they hated him. Like there's some stuff you're like, this math ain't mathing, man. You look at some of these situations, you're like, did God, when God put Daniel in that lion's den and the shut them out the lions, bro, did Samson rip him out? How did he rip a lion in half? Like these are you could go through the Bible, bro. Don't open the book of Revelation. You're like, every page, you're like, what is going on? Intentional. You're supposed to meditate. You're supposed to, you see, these things are puzzling, shocking, or even horrifying at times. And what happened is they're supposed to make us want to explore and understand. And through reflection and meditation, what we'll find is that there is meaning that's behind these stories. And these meanings are supposed to make us wise. And these very sudden deaths in the story that we read today are such moments. And I want to share with you some of the things that I think are standing behind it. You see, the Ark of the Covenant represented God's very presence. He's a holy God. And because he's holy, it requires us to come at him a certain way. It's just the nature of his holiness. And you see, the issue of people peeking in the Ark of the Covenant, or the issue of Uzzah studying the Ark, these are problems of reverence and obedience, not problems of intentions. I don't believe the men looking in the Ark had bad intentions. Like, God is dope, and if you could see God stuff, you want to see. There was a curiosity to learn more about God. I don't think their intentions were bad. I don't believe David was wrong for moving the ark back to the city. And certainly, Uzzah wasn't ill-intentioned. He wanted to stop the ark from hitting the ground. These are all people who had good intentions. But you know the saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. The unfortunate reality, and this makes us very uncomfortable as a modern audience, but your intentions does not override the need for reverence. Our good intentions does not override the need for obedience. You can be as well-intended as you want to be, but you have to revere God. It says the beginning of wisdom is the fear of the Lord. It's not enough just to have good intentions, but there must be alongside it reverence and obedience. Remember, this is a little side point. So, and this is something that Bishop pointed out to me, and I thought this was incredible. This is why this man's the bishop, bro. There's some stuff that he points out, I'm like, this dude's a real deal. I was so wowed by this is the point that he made that made me want to say, okay, I need to swim in that lane real quick. He said, Dev, you know what the problem was with the way the ark was carried? He said it wasn't just the fact that they disobeyed, right? Exodus 25. You're supposed to carry it with poles. This is what Bishop said. They put it on the cart. Who else put it on the cart? The Philistines. They were interacting with God the way the Philistines interacted with God, instead of interacting with God the way they were supposed to. I was like, Bishop, bro, you really is the man, huh? But how often do we do that? We come to God with worldly thinking. We come to God with our own preferences. We come to God with our own preconceived notions and say, God, I'm going to have a walk with you the way I want to. Or let's be real, it's more like TikTok says that God looks like this. He's perfect love. And so if he's perfect love, why can't I do this? We let the world determine how we're supposed to carry God instead of the word to determine it. And here's even better. 2 Samuel says, what's on the ark? God's name. When they carry the ark, they say they're using the word bear. We are called to bear the name of God. And if you're going to bear God's name, the only way that you're going to do it properly is with reverence and with obedience. I don't care how good your intentions are. If you want to walk with and live for God according to the way of the Philistines, it's going to get you nowhere fast. And so we got 15 minutes, and I want to get really, really practical. So I told a story. Got some principles, some big spiritual principles. Let's get practical. I'm borrowing a book. I'm borrowing from Paul. That's what Paul does. He starts with the principles, and then he gets practical. I'm using his technique. So let's get practical. This is the, you know, the where it says usually in the middle of the book, it'll say, therefore, this, and this. In light of the need for reverence and obedience, therefore, let's do this. Let's talk about some practical reverence. Somewhere along the line, we got things out of order with God. You see, we take Jesus' love to be licensed to be irreverent. We got the hippie dip Jesus in our mind that wants to eat cheese pizza and roll a blunt and just say all things are good vibes. That's somebody's image of Jesus, right? Or it could be the dumbing down of our culture and the laxing that's happening in the world around us, and that's bleeding into the church. We cannot forget this, that before Jesus was ever your friend, he was Lord first. And if you ever forget that he's Lord, that friendship that you love is going to be real rocky. And we forget that before he was brother, he's our God. Don't forget. Jesus is gentle. He's kind. He's all those things. But he's still an all-powerful God that killed 50,000 people. That wasn't, I think we forget how oneness works. That story wasn't a different God. That's Jesus. That we think this is a different God. That's Jesus. Okay, like don't forget that the God that we're worshiping, like he does that thing. You're like, oh, well, that's Old Testament. Tell that to Ananias and Sapphira. They died. Like, okay. Now, I'm not advocating for you to be spooky and mystical, right? I'm not saying turn a church to an Orthodox, like Greek Orthodox church. Like, don't do that, right? I don't need you to do incense and walk around like this and the smoke. I don't want all that, all right? I don't want to go in and smell that admixture of myrrh and frankincense. We're not doing all that, okay? Some of us might have a trauma response, right? We're not here for all that. But let me tell you a couple of things that we can do. There's lots that I could add to this list. I'll just pick a couple. Timeliness. How about that one? You want to be reverent? Stop coming to church late. It's real hard for me to believe that you revere the Lord when you come to church late. I mean, come on now. Look. I hope this makes us uncomfortable. I'm going to lean into it. Dude, imagine. Okay, I want to have an exercise for all our single ladies. Single ladies, got an exercise. Let's say this guy was like putting it on, schmoozing it, right? He's talking all this hype about how much you the baddest thing since sliced bread, da-da-da-da-da-da. He said, hey, we got this date set up. It's set up for Saturday at 7. And you got so nice. You look, girl, you doing your thing. You smell good. You look good. Okay, cool. You said, hey, meet here at 7. He pull up at 7:45. Are you even going to still be there? Who's still going to be there 45 minutes later? But God, the one that we claim to love. And every Sunday we jump and dance and scream We just like that dude talking about, oh God, you so wonderful, and you so this, and this, and we spitting all this game, trying to schmooze God, but then we show up to church late. Like, what is this all about? That's not reverence. That's not love toward God. Or let there be the slightest bit of inconvenience. Ooh, man, I had a tough day today at work. Ooh, yeah, God, we'll think about this another time. Hey, I'll catch you next week, God. I love you. Reverence. Or how about this? I'm talking to myself with this one. Ooh. Serious engagement throughout the service. When you're here, be in the service. Church is not a concert. It's not a lecture hall, but rather it's a holy place for the Almighty to dwell. What we're doing here, listen, I'm going to make it a statement, and if you don't like it, I can care less. There is nothing more important in your week than spending time with God. Whether it's your prayer time, whether it's Bible time, whether you're meeting God at small group, whether you're here, whether it's these times with God is the most important thing you're doing in your week. And if you don't think that, you're wrong. Your mindset needs to be changed until you are persuaded there is nothing more important than the moment that I'm experiencing with God right here and right now. You need a radical shift in your mindset. Nothing you are doing is that important. I don't believe it. I don't care what you, but Pastor, you don't understand. A, B, C, D. It's not that I don't understand. You're just wrong. This is the most important. What is more important than being with Jesus? Because here's the thing. Guess what heaven is? Being with him all the time. So we're living what you do on Sunday, what you do on Wednesday or small group or your prayer time. That's what your whole life is going to be anyway. And so if it's not important for you now, trust me, when you stand before him, well, depart from me because this was supposed to be important. Okay. Treat the house of God with respect. Huh? Treat with a little bit of respect. Keep it clean. Men, if you dribble on the seat, clean it up. It's disgusting. Clean it up. Women, your hygiene products, make sure it's in the trash, right? Like be clean. If you see trash in the parking lot, pick it up. If you see a water bottle under the chair, pick it up. Keep it clean. If you clog the toilet, let somebody know, or you just unclog it. Like, bro, like take care of the house of God, right? And there's this. We're moving into an extreme. It's not about the building; it's about the presence. Those same people are carnal. The people who advocate that are the most unsubmitted and carnal people. Like, dude, miss me with that, bro. Get out of here with that. For all of history, can I tell you what they had? A meeting place. And when you say, well, it's not about the meeting place. When Paul wrote letters, what did he say? The church in your house. That was the regular meeting place. So that place was the temple. So yes, this place does matter. It certainly matters, and we need a place to gather together. When we're at Christian's house, it's not just Christian's house. We are in the temple of God, and we're having a great time. Right? We need to, I love this one. We need to, and I want to apologize because I've led the church astray with regard to this, but we got to turn a corner. We got to come to church presentable, right? Don't come to church sloppy. Get it together. Dress like you're coming to church, right? We need to dress like we're going to church. Like, if I want to use Trump as an example, but that's probably not a good one. If you were standing before the president of China, who could flip, or let me pick another guy, Putin, who does jail Americans and just could care less. If you're in front of Putin, guess what you're doing? Acting right. Whether you said, whether it's respect by reverence or respect by fear, how you carry yourself is going to be different because I don't want to be in prison in Siberia mining icicles or whatever they do. Bro, I am not Dostoevsky. I don't want to write a book. Memoirs from prison. Nah, brother, I want to go to America. So you're going to carry yourself right. But we get in front of the greatest power, the potentate of all creation, and we're like, what's up, man? You know, I'm just whatever, shorts and flip-flops. I'm not with that. No, we have to do better. We have to do better. We have to rise above that. We need to treat and meet Jesus with the respect that he deserves. You know, an era of my youth in pastorate, right? I was like, all this stuff don't matter. And y'all, you know, you'll see the old videos. I had a ball cap and a sweatshirt on. I was like, I'm just with Jesus. It doesn't really matter. Right. I'm with Jesus. And it might not matter to the world. And it might not matter to other people. And it might seem extra. But what I don't want to do is other people worshiping their God to have more gravity and sincerity in their approach than I do with my God. I don't want them to take their God more serious than I take my God. And of course, we have to have a level of decorum, which I'm also guilty, right? I could be a bit of a goofball. I'm kind of a goofy guy, you know. I like to horseplay a little bit, all right? I like to horseplay, all right? But we got to remember that we're in the house of God. We need to conduct ourselves as such. And look, I'm preaching to myself as much as I am to everybody here. Ooh, nah, we're gonna power through. We're gonna finish this. I don't care. We're gonna finish it. All right. Can I tell you what'll help you be more reverent? I got you. When you realize that God doesn't just call pastors, he calls congregants as well. You are God called to the church that you're in. Or at least you should be persuaded of that. And if you're not, that's okay. Go. If you don't, and I say this with sincerity, and this might make me lose people, and that's okay. If you don't feel like God has called you to be here, go. Go. Because I'm going to preach against sin. I'm going to preach consecration. I'm going to preach against your flesh, and that's going to challenge you. And the only way that's going to challenge you is because you believe that this is the place that God has called you. I'm going to lead a church in a particular direction, and you might not always agree, and you might not always like it, but if you believe that this is the place that you've been called to, and you believe that I truly and sincerely hear from God, you say, you know what, I can deal with it. But if you don't have that buy-in, you're not going to make it. I'd rather be in a place where you fit than to be here and be miserable. That is not what I want for anybody. I'm not trying to have a social club. I'm trying to build a church. And building a church means we're going a certain direction. And if I can't get the church to go in a certain direction because everybody wants to be chiefs, there's too many chiefs and not enough Indians. We can't have that. You see, if you're called here, that means he's not just called you to this building, he's called you to the rhythm and the program of that assembly. There's a rhythm and a program to that assembly, and you are called to be a part of it. You're not here to forward your own agenda of what you think church should look like. That is not your job. You don't get to determine. No. If you don't like small groups, go to a church that doesn't have one. If you don't like being a daughter work, go to a different church. If you don't like Wednesday night Bible studies like this format, go so. If you can't get with it, it's not for you. But if you're called here to the best of your ability, you need to get along with the program. Now, I understand there's some geographical things, right? Like Kim, for example, lives in like Chesapeake, right? And so trying to witness to people and do some things, and maybe there's some programs that are a little bit more challenging, and we have some geographical things. I understand. I try to be understanding. But as much as we are able, as much as we are capable of being involved with the program, we need to. And sometimes that's a call to sacrifice. Now, sacrifice does not mean run yourself ragged for the kingdom and destroy your personal life. I'm not advocating for that. Like, go for a walk, touch grass, and get enough sleep. Like, please, do all those good things. I'm out of time, but I'm going to steal time and keep going because I'm not going to take this into next week. I'm going to talk about practical obedience, and I think I can do it in 5 minutes, maybe. That was reverence. Let's talk about obedience real quick. We are able to come to God how we are, but then there's an expectation that we will yield and become what he wants us to be, right? Hebrews chapter 4 says, come boldly before the throne of grace. But we take that as license to stay how we are. But Romans chapter 6 says, shall we say then, are we to continue in sin so that grace may abound? God forbid. We must allow the word of God to sanctify us. Do not mistake the church loving you to mean endorsing sin. That's not the same thing. Just because we love you and you're nice does not mean we are endorsing your sin. Titus chapter 2 says this, the grace of God has appeared to all men, bringing salvation, instructing us to do what? Deny ungodliness and worldly pleasure and live sensibly, righteous, and godly, not in heaven, when? In the present age. We have to get rid of this mindset that I'll be perfect in heaven. You can be righteous and godly today. And we are called to do that very thing, to be righteous and godly today. Our morality cannot be culturally conditioned. We talked about in the men's group last night, culture promotes fornication and revelry and pride. And you know, a big one is shacking up. A lot of people shacking up before they get married. That's not the will of God. Just because culture is okay with it doesn't mean we're going to accept that in the church. We'll love you. You can fellowship here, but that doesn't mean you're not in sin. And we're going to gently say, hey, let's massage this thing with something that's a little bit more pleasing to God. Our morality cannot be shaped by our subjective sense of self. We are told that every desire and passion that we feel ought to be our identity. We have theories of race and gender and political ideologies of all kinds. And these are things that we attach ourselves to determine who we are. But we must allow the Bible to shape our identity. We are the children of God. He did not make a mistake when he made you. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. I was going to do too much. I don't want to do the southern preacher thing. I was about to beat a dead horse. We'll leave it at that. Let's not exalt gender, sex, race, political affiliation. None of those things are great. The kingdom of God is what is great. Our morality cannot be shaped by our comfort. Oh, man. Oh, the American church, you're not going to like this one. Gluttony is still a sin. Gluttony is still a sin. You can overeat. And hold on, and listen, I want you to understand, I'm not saying being fat is a sin. I'm saying being gluttonous is a sin. And you can be high metabolism, eat too much. Gluttony is a sin. Right? We, American church, right, we've forgotten that, because we're shaped by comfort, that revival is built on sacrifice. It takes work to build a church. For every 100 people you see in the church, there's the thousands upon thousands upon thousands of hours that were worked behind the scene that you don't see. I know NAC is a little over 300, I think, right about now, right? And they tried to do the numbers of how many people have been born again since Bishop has been there. I think the last estimate was over 3,000 people. There is work that is done. You don't just wake up and decide, oh, well, here we are. You know, if we're going to see revival here, it's going to take sacrifice. And it's not just sacrifice, though. It's going to take to build the work here. It's going to take consecration. We can't be distracted. We can't be worldly. We can't be carnal. We need to be different. And the world is looking for something different. The American church has forgotten that persecution and rejection is a badge of honor and not something to be feared. We don't want to share the gospel because, well, what if they look at me different? Or what if they say ugly words at me? When the apostles were beaten, they danced, they rejoiced, they lifted up their voice. We said, I have been counted worthy to suffer the same way that my Lord suffered. When are we going to get it in our hearts that if I can get just a little bit of persecution, that you know what, I'm going to learn about him in the fellowships of his suffering. There is something about him I want to learn on the other side of rejection. We must allow the word to be a mirror and to examine us. And we must lay bare the root and bring the axe and take down those deep idols that are in our hearts. We must take them down. And I'll end with this. Our good intentions do not outweigh our need for reverence and obedience. Good intentions do not outweigh our need for reverence and disobedience. And that's the burden that the Lord put on my heart tonight. And so I want to open for questions as I normally do, just if something wants to be clarified. Because I want to make sure we are all in understanding about what was talked about. I want to make sure that we can start making some steps forward together. Any questions? Anything you want clarified? I should just preach more and I'll get less questions. Otherwise, I'll be asking me 1,000,001 questions. 30 minutes of questions. It was just so well said. That we got no questions. Everything perfectly understood. You know, I said this 100 times. They say that if there's no questions, either you taught perfectly or you taught so bad that people don't know what to ask. And I'm not a perfect teacher. Hopefully it wasn't so bad that we don't know what to ask. Final call? Okay. I want to thank everybody for being here. It is always a pleasure to have you here with us. I love to be with the people of God. Love to be with him, with God in his house, and to just walk through his word. Everybody watching online, God bless you. You're dismissed.